Why, hello there. My name is Mountain, and today I'd like to talk to you about this. And what is this, you might ask? Well, this, my friends, is the Aer Simple Kit 1.2 liters. Now, as the name suggests, this is a straightforward general use simple zip pouch, Zippy 1 and Zippy 2, recently released by Aer, the San Francisco-based manufacturer of a dizzying array of bags, slings, luggages, pouches, and other accessories, many of which I have reviewed on this channel previously. Now, this Aer Simple Kit belongs to Aer's relatively new Simple subline of products, which I find fascinating since they are so different from the rest of their kind of design language, the rest of their products. And they really lean into this idea of combining very simple designs with, in a familiar carry space, but then executing them out of these crazy high-end materials for no other reason other than just the love of the game, I guess, which is something I can get with. Now, on the product page, they describe this as one kit, endless possibilities, built with a lightweight Ultra 200X fabric, and that's right here, exterior. The simple kit keeps your gear organized, whether it's tech, toiletries, or other everyday essentials. And I think that speaks to its positioning as a general use pouch and also what Aer, and I would say most of us, would see as its most distinguishing feature. Now, its main claim to fame is, in fact, that distinguishing feature that, along with the rest of the Simple series, it's made out of this high-tech Ultra 200X fabric, which is a fairly high-tech and relatively new fabric out there in the same kind of ultra-high molecular weight, poly, whatever kind of line of materials that includes things like, DCF and XPack and all of those different things. And, here it's just kind of used for the looks, which is fine. And then it's also complemented with a bunch of other really nice material choices, which we'll talk about in a second here. And I think its other kind of main claim to fame is that it is, due to its simple nature and excellent materials, really a flexible small pouch that can comfortably support a wide range of use cases, from a simple stationary pouch, EDC pouch, simple tech kit, or maybe even a relatively minimal dopp kit. Now, there are some things to consider. While I don't usually talk too much about price on this channel, I think the price to value, or certainly the price to utility ratio on this one, is going to make this a little bit of a tough sell for certain people. And I think that's because a lot of people tend to view purchase decisions through the kind of valuation paradigm that tends to place a lot of value on like the utility or like the functionality of the product. And here it's a pretty simple product, relatively, like higher than other most pouch kind of price points. And that's because I think you're really paying for the materials and the design. So for people who view this through the lens of like, design premium or like aesthetics premium, or even like materials used for maybe aesthetics as opposed to their functional properties, and view that as a valuable thing worth paying money for, I think this is going to be maybe make a lot more sense. And for those of you who are looking at this more like, what raw utility can I get for like, $1 or something like that, this is maybe not going to make as much sense. And also, I think another thing to consider is that while I listed as general use and flexibility as a pro, I think it's also something that we need to consider as well, because there's very little that this pouch can do that a simple generic flat pouch that's maybe $1 or two can't do just about as well. It's sort of like the representative example of like jack of all trades, master of none. Now, finally, there's no padding or organization really to speak of into this pouch other than like these two little compartments. There's no like internal pocketing, there's no padding or anything. So that means you need to be a little bit careful about some of the things that you put in there. If you put anything delicate in there, you drop it, it's going to bang either against each other or hit, the surface and break. And anything you put in here will kind of jumble up, so it's not the best for like little tiny small things. Now, in terms of an overview for this pouch or kit, if you will, it's available in two colors, black or black magic, if you will, and white. Available in one material weight, that's this Ultra 200X, one size, that's 1.2 liters, and it retails for $39 US over on aersf.com or your local country retailer. Unsurprisingly, this is the 1.2 liter version in black magic, or black in Ultra 200X. Now, as a disclaimer, I've been using this for a couple of months now, and I'd like to thank Aer for sending this over for review. Even though they sent this over for review, as usual, all opinions are my own. They don't get any input into this video, and they don't even know when it's going live. So next, let's talk about the materials and design. Kind of briefly up front, as I mentioned, I find the entire Aer Simple series a fascinating subline just because it's so different from the rest of their kind of products and approach. So here I have another member of that. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see them both. This is the Aer Simple Sling, and you can immediately see the family resemblance here, and kind of just in their approach and materials and all that. And you can see that basically what they're trying to do in this series, and there's also a tote in this series as well, is explore this fascinating space of playing with some fundamental shapes and very well understood carry, modes, sling here and a kit here and then a tote bag there. And then like just mashing them up with some absolutely bonkers materials relative to what you would usually find in applications like this, and certainly the kind of like simplicity of construction on this. Now, beauty is always in the eye of the beholder, but I feel for those of you like me that kind of, get with the idea or like the idea and the vibe of like, high-tech materials being used for aesthetics and like the way the Ultra looks. And again, this is very polarizing for some people. And, you like kind of like, well, this one doesn't have fidlock buckles, but like the water resistant zips and the Ultra material and the Hypalon and all that jazz. You're going to think of this as certainly a very good looking, I don't know if it's beautiful, but a very good looking and at least probably the most immediately recognizable and distinctive of the simple pouches you may have in your collection. Conversely, those of you that look at this and you're like, that material looks like a trash bag, and there's a lot of you out there that think that, especially when you see the inside here, I think that this is maybe not going to be as good looking for you, but that's the way the beauty works. Well, let's talk about the design. The Simple Kit and the Simple series are, as they say on their namesake, very simple in execution. This is very much consistent with the rest of the series as I showed you. And it really is just this big, prominent, simple, flat rectangle. You can see it has very little width. You notice the stiffness right away. Like the material itself is quite stiff. So when empty, it keeps its shape well. It has really, sharp corners. There's no rounding or anything on there. Has this kind of subtle folded gusset at the bottom that lets the main compartment expand out when it has stuff in it. I'll show you that in a second. And really the other prominent elements you notice are this kind of these big, linear, straight, water resistant zippers, then the big hang hook, and then the, zipper counter pull here. So it's a very simple bag, but a very kind of rectangular Euclidean kind of construct right there. And then of course, the other thing that catches your eye is this Ultra 200X fabric. It's obviously highly water resistant, though obviously the seams are not taped or anything like that. It has that stiffness. You notice the kind of reinforcing X grid on there, and you'll see that on the inside as well. And then you're also going to kind of see how that matches well with the use of Hypalon and the water resistant zippers and all of those things. And like I said, some people like this, some people don't like the way this looks. I happen to be the one that fall in the camp of people that thinks this looks great, but it is at the same time undoubtedly a very rugged material used primarily for aesthetics on this bag. In terms of materials, I already talked about it to death, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. Ultra 200X YKK water resistant fabric, Hypalon accents on like the tab, and then the zipper pulls. I really like the zipper pulls. I like that they're using these now in all of their new bags, etc. And then that inherent stiffness from the material. It's nominally water resistant as a result of all these materials, but like I don't know how relevant that is for a pouch, A. And B, like if you throw it in a lake or something like that, water's still going to get in. Also, because they do talk about this being usable as a toiletry kit, it's not as water resistant as you might expect versus something like that's purpose made for that, purpose, such as like a Matador, flat pouch. And I'll talk about that at the end here as well. So water resistant, certainly more than most other pouches, but not waterproof. There's not too much to talk about in terms of like the actual, functionality of this thing. It's got a main compartment. Zippers pull really easily because you have this big hanging hook and you have this zipper counter pull here. So really easy to operate them. Plus, the whole thing is flat. So really easy to open these. Used very much for the look, as I mentioned, and I think they work well with the Ultra, but we also gives you like a lot of kind of good visibility into the inside of this bag when you do open it up, at least this kind of top compartment here, which I think is great. Also, this one inside of here also gives you pretty good visibility into the main interior of this bag. Now, the zipper runs that full width, so you can really crank on it, as I mentioned, but there's no contrast lining on the inside. So it can get fairly dark inside of there, you can see, but it's also not that big of a bag. So it's not like you're not going to be able to find what you're looking for. There's also no like internal organization. So that means that everything is just going to be there at the bottom. So that's fine here. Access in and out is very frictionless for the most part, because it's just such a simple pouch. There's nothing to get hung up on or caught up on, etc. The main compartment is unlined, as I mentioned, so you get that plasticky laminate with the X grid of the Ultra fabric. Some people don't like that. I don't particularly love it, but I think it's just sort of like in keeping with the idea that this is a simple pouch with very simple design. There's no backlining in there. And you can see if you're looking in the front of the bag, you can see there's this elastic stretch mesh that kind of separates this front compartment here from the back compartment. I thought that was actually really clever. It lets kind of the volume flex between the two things, especially for the front compartment here, which I'll talk about in a second. And then beyond that, there's nothing in terms of pocketing or organization. It's just a simple pleat at the bottom. So you do get a little bit of, gusseting and expansion in the profile view when you look at it. But, it could sort of stand up on its own, but, it's not intended for that, I would say. Everything you throw in there is going to get mixed up in there and bump and scratch against each other. So obviously you want to be careful about what you put in there. The front compartment, as I mentioned here, is much smaller. It's stacked on top of the main compartment. And then it has no gusseting at the bottom, but it uses this elastic mesh to flex the volume in between these two areas. So that lets it actually accommodate things like, for example, a pair of AirPod Pros or something like that. And I think that that's a clever way of like kind of keeping the overall kind of flat and rectangular kind of design that they had, but still making this front pocket usable for anything other than like a small flat thing. And I also think the inclusion of this front pocket, which is not the same size as the main pocket, is one area where the Simple Kit has a bit of an actual concrete advantage over like a truly simple generic pouch, because you can use this to kind of organize little bits and bobs, adapters, also things like a chapstick, AirPods, etc., and keep them separate from the main compartment, which is very useful when you're trying to like use this in an EDC context. Maybe you have like your cords and cables in here, and then you have like other smaller stuff like your chapstick in here, and you can get to one or the other without kind of rummaging through everything that you've got thrown in the main compartment here. And then the only thing to watch out for, like I said, is the lack of padding here and the lack of kind of protection or sidewalls, because anything you put in there can get damaged. So don't put like a cell phone or anything super delicate inside of there. I would talk about load carriage, but there really isn't anything to talk about other than like there's a hanging loop here. I just use it as a zipper counterpole because it's not like I'm hanging up this kit bag. But, you know, if you do need to hang it up, maybe if you use this like a toiletry kit, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, I think this could be a nice way of hanging that up on the wall when you're not using it. So let's talk about sample loadouts. I told you that this bag or this kit really is focused on like, you know, general use, is flexible and all that. And its greatest advantage is like its open and simple nature. So maybe the first thing I would talk about is how you might use it. And this is how I usually deployed it, I would say, more often than not, as a kind of simple tech kit. Here is an example of an Aer Simple pouch, or sorry, Aer Slim pouch 2. I'm actually going to review, I really love the Aer. I actually have so many of these. Here's another one, fully packed out. This is for when I'm using it with X-Pack bags. And this is when I'm using it with nylon bags. I'm not even kidding about that. Anyway, listen, I often use this for like my EDC or travel, you know, electronics organization. You can see I have a bunch of cables and stuff inside of there. So let's take a look at how I would pack most of this stuff out inside of here. So we've got, for example, MacBook chargers. This is a big one. This is the 95, not the biggest, but like the 96 watt or whatever. MagSafe cable, because I enjoy paying Apple money for proprietary cables. Speaking of which, another watch cable, Apple Watch cable there. Maybe a couple of, here's one USB-C cable, 1 meter, and then I often carry like a small, here's an Anker 30 watt nano charger with folding prongs, and then like a 1.5 meter USB-C cable. I use this to like charge my phone and still be able to use it while I'm like, you know, sleeping in the bed at the hotel or something like that. And then I got a bunch of other small little bits and bobs. Let me pack these up here first. So what I would do here, as you can see, like inside of the slim pouch, I had those all in independent little pockets. There's just one pocket here. So we're going to open this up, drop in your charger, and then just throw all the things and all the things in there like this. So you can see already that kind of fills up nicely the main compartment, but there's other smaller things that I might want to keep track of. So I often bring like a MagSafe, you know, tripod, phone tripod. This is like the Peak Design mobile tripod. I use that to kind of keep my phone propped up on the tray table in front of me when I'm, you know, watching a movie or something like that when flying. And then also we've got little bits and bobs, some screen cleaners, a USB-C reader, and then a plethora, because I'm fully embracing the USB-C world, but sometimes the rest of the world isn't, a plethora of various little small doodads, adapters or whatever, and those can just go right into this main front compartment. I don't often use these things, but if I do, I, you know, want to be able to access them, and so that kind of gives you this nice little, look at that. And you can already see, like, I mean, this is an amazing pouch. Don't get me wrong. I love this so much because I have so many of them. I use so many of them. But you can see this is a very different kind of, you know, like, well, not very, but it's a somewhat different kind of carry experience in terms of like, you know, what you get with this pouch and its profile and its weight, certainly, and kind of like how you get that inside of here with a lot of like different padding, and it has side walls and stuff. So there's pros and cons to that. But I very often would use this when I just wanted like a simple kind of tech kit. I would use it exactly like that. And obviously you have to spend some time kind of like pulling out all your cables and then sorting through them when you wanted to access, you know, one particular one. But what I found is like very often, like I'm not charging my devices other than like once I get to the hotel, or if I'm traveling, or, you know, maybe at the end of the day when I get back home or I get to the office, I already have a charger. So this is sort of like a just in case kind of thing. So you can see it's quite nice for that. And then also you still have like a small item organization in the front, which I think is great because you get into that when you need it. The rest of the time it stays out of the way. And you can also see how that kind of elastic mesh, if we look on the inside here, is kind of flexing in a little bit to kind of give you some extra give without ruining the front profile. And then it stands up on its own. And contrast that here to, like I said, my other identically packed out one. But as the saying goes, wait, there's more. So when I say more, let's talk about using this as sort of like an EDC kind of general use kind of pouch, which is another kind of area where I think it excels at. I'm just going to show you some stuff that I have carried inside of here. So we have a tactile turn pen. This is like the Las Vegas one or Miami Nights one, whatever it's called, Retro 90s, something like that. Sharpie, a couple of Copics for sketching and whatnot, and then like a Roto-Ring pencil, another Copics marker there, and that's kind of a nice little like, general use stationary sort of things. Then we've got some EDC goods here, a little MagSafe solitaire flashlight or whatever that is, some chapstick, a little James Brand Elco pocket knife, a carabiner, I forgot, that's the new one, some Sony, whatever the latest Bluetooth earbuds are, a little Yves Saint Laurent, I don't actually know how to pronounce that, collaboration lighter goes inside of there. I really like this one, how slim and kind of handy this lighter is. Inside of there, and then maybe some random doodads. You got a comb, some hand sanitizer, some Band-Aids in case you cut yourself because you're clumsy like me. This is a James Brand Low kind of wallet. I use it as a card holder. And then some medicine to numb the pain after you cut yourself. I have here the Nightcore Carbo 10,000 review of this coming up soon. This is a great little power bank that I've been testing out. Here I have a Wubin X4 flashlight. I guess you probably don't need two flashlights, but I have actually carried two flashlights in an EDC context for no reason. Some field notes, because of course, and then a little random thing here is a Playdate by Panic. So all of these things are things that I would kind of carry inside of here. And you're going to see, I'll take some of the smaller items like these little EDC goods or whatever. I'll drop them in the front here. That's also where I'll put like the comb, the Band-Aids, and the medicine. Put those inside of the front here like this. And then in the main compartment, drop in my field notes, all my pens and pencils, and then, kind of off to the side, tuck maybe my hand sanitizer. Maybe I'm going to put this in the front here, but let's put it in there for now. The flat low here, if you will. And you can see now we're starting to like reach the limits of what I think you can comfortably pack inside of here. So I would probably have to choose between either another flashlight or like the Carbo. Let's just go with a Carbo for now. Carbo 10,000, and you can see you got a nice little loadout there. And if you really wanted to bring your Playdate, you could probably still fit it inside of there. I'm not sure this is exactly how I would do it, but I just want to show that it is possible. And you can see that's a nice little, like, you got a bunch of random stuff kind of all packed inside of here, and it works great as a EDC pouch. And now the downside is if you want to get those pens out, well, you're gonna have to spend some time kind of fishing your items out of here, but you can get it. It's certainly not undoable. You can see it's very easy to kind of see inside of there and pack everything in there. And this is actually a sizable loadout for such a simple pouch. And obviously if you want to get to your little EDC goods, your Band-Aids or your knife or whatever, chapstick or whatever, that's all easily accessible here in the front. And then you can, obviously customize as you need. Maybe you're not carrying a gigantic thing of hand sanitizer, so you want to carry a bigger flashlight. That's easy to tuck into the corner there. You can still fit, your battery bank or whatever you wanted inside of there, which I think is pretty cool. So really, what that brings us to is like, who is this for? Who is this not for? And like I said at the beginning, I think with the kit like this, like you really have to value the design and the usage of the Ultra and the other kind of high-tech materials for their aesthetic properties or their design properties rather than their sheer utility for this to really kind of make the most sense for you. And then conversely, if you're like hyper focused on utility or functionality, bang for the buck in that context, this probably isn't going to be the best choice for you. But kind of viewing it from that lens, I think it's a great choice or a good choice, I should say, for those looking for a small tech kit. As I just showed you, it works really well for that. It is lightweight, and it is actually, unless you're carrying very delicate electronics, I think it's very competent in that use case and gets rid of a lot of the additional kind of, frankly, unnecessary bulk of other kind of EDC organizer or tech organizers out in the market these days. I also think it's a great, simple, general use EDC pouch. Again, I showed you, a bunch of stuff that you could put in there. I doubt that you'd be carrying all those different things at once, so you can kind of mix and match from your kind of personal loadout and needs. I like that it has this kind of subtle second, or not subtle, this second little smaller compartment in the front that really adds a lot of flexibility and organization for, like, you know, the big stuff versus the little stuff, and that kind of elastic kind of panel flexing the volume, I think, is a really neat touch. I like that. Conversely, not going to be a great choice for those of you with moderately complex EDC or tech loadouts. Like, obviously, you got some bigger stuff, or got a bunch of stuff you need to get rapid in and out access to, or whatever. This may not be the right choice for you. It's a very simple kit. Those of you with really complex EDC loadouts, you saw, like, I started to fill that up towards the end there with all the stuff that I was putting in there. And like, some of you who are really into, like, for example, stationery will be like, I could fill an entire thing of this with just the stationery I carry, like the pens and pencils and markers and notebooks and stuff that I carry around on a daily basis. I'm one of you. I already kind of mentioned, I don't think it's the best choice as a toiletry kit. It will work, but there's a much better choice out there, which I'll show you. And it just does a better job, I think, particularly of resisting, like, you know, stains and smells and stuff like that. This is a very expensive kind of like kit or material to, like, maybe get toothpaste stains or, like, you know, deodorant smells stuck to. So that really brings us to the question of, like, you know, if you're in the market for a bag or a pouch like this, what are some other things that you might want to consider? Okay, so first, and maybe not foremost, but certainly to consider, is Aer makes a bunch of other awesome pouches out there. One of my favorites is this Aer Slim Pouch 2, 1.5 liters, $49. It's a far superior EDC or really anything organization for just $10 more than this one. It's probably one of my favorite pouches, as I mentioned, out there. It's got a bunch of different organizations and zipper and stretch pockets and big open spaces, and then like a front quick access pocket. And it can also be used as a sling if you bring your own strap on there. It's got 2 strap attachment points. Good padding, good organization, available in a wide variety of materials and colors, nylon, X-Pack, and Ultra. Though I will say the Ultra version of this is like $79, which is like $40 over this one. So I would probably stick with, you know, one of like the base variants, nylon or an X-Pack, unless, you know. Another one that you might want to consider is the Evergood Civic Flat Pouch, the Cludy, I don't know what you call it, like the Carryology edition one. Very similar approach to the space here, and like, it's a simple pouch, but it uses kind of like very similar kind of you know, materials, as you can see here. 2 kind of compartments, one on here, and then you flip it over to one on the back like this. Got some little subtle gusseting on here. Depending on your loadout, some of you may find that the same size front and back compartments may work better for you. The colors are just bright orange or bright blue, but weirdly no black or white. And the downside of this is that not only is it more expensive and kind of like nominally smaller, like I said, you do get 2 equally sized compartments on there, so maybe it's roughly around the same size in practice, depending on what your loadout is. But the downside is not only that, but it's also, like, at least the time of this recording, subject to that kind of annoying, some would say, manufactured scarcity, hype beast games, as with other recent collaboration products. So it's really hard to, like, get your hands on this if you don't have it already. I would suggest you just wait a year. If you don't have one already, wait a year till they becomes part of their normal kind of mainline offerings, and then you can pick it up. Bellroy has their light pouch duo. These things come together in $45 for the both of them. Simple, large, general use flat pouch. This one has a couple of pockets of internal organization on there. You can see it's significantly larger than here, but what they did is they took that, you know, made this, you know, simple flat design. Again, you do have some gusseting, and you do have some nice kind of water resistant materials. They're not as sexy as this. And then they made a smaller one that comes with it. Again, you got these water resistant zips on there. And this one is, I think, you know, suitable for like your, you know, toothbrushes, or, well, I would say like pencils and cables and stuff like that. So anyway, kind of separating those 2 volumes into here, I think this is an interesting choice. It's certainly one that I've used a lot for like my miscellaneous everything, throw everything inside of there, especially when one bag traveling here. And I mentioned, you know, toiletries kit is not my #1 choice for this. This is what my #1 choice for like minimalist toiletry, other than the Ziploc bag, but actually I would recommend this over a Ziploc bag. This is the Matador flat pack zipper case. There's also a roll top version of it. It is lightweight, water and stain and odor resistant. You can see it's made out of this like shiny welded construction, shiny kind of water resistant plastic material. I don't actually know what it's made out of, but it's great. And it folds down flat, and you just throw all your toiletries out here. Weighs nothing, and it keeps it sealed with this really nice watertight zipper. And like I said, just much better option for a toiletry kit, I would say, either this one or the roll top version. And when I'm doing minimalist toiletry kit, this is what I reach for. And so really that is it. If you have any questions about this little kit pouch thing, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If I can, I will answer them. And if you have anything you would like me to review, not just bags, but anything, go ahead and leave those in the comments below. If I can, I will review them. Thank you very much.